What's up, guys, and welcome back to Tech Planet. Today I'm going to show you the process and how you can successfully take plants from your vacationing country or wherever you're visiting back to your home country. It's going to be a pretty interesting video. I'm going to show you how to prepare your plants. I'm going to tell you where I went wrong and how to avoid all the stress and issues that I hit up. And then I'm going to show you the plants because I still managed to get them into the USA with some help from some friends. And that's what we're going to go over. It's pretty cool. Alright, so the first step to taking plants back from vacation to another country is to actually fly there. In my case, we flew to South Korea to visit my in-laws. It was a tremendous amount of fun, spent 3 weeks there, a little hot. But anyways, while I was scrolling through Instagram, I saw this really awesome account with just the most amazing setup, and I clicked it. It ended up being Mons Master. I looked, the location was only 20 minutes away from where I'm staying with my in-laws, which is in Incheon. So if you're at the Incheon airport and you've got like a 4 or 5 hour layover, you could totally visit this shop. They do have different hours, so you definitely want to reach out and contact them through Instagram. But super awesome guy. I did a whole tour video that is coming out pretty soon, so look forward to that. Now, before we look at the cool plants that I'm importing, well, here's a little sneak peek because I'm going to show you how to prep them and everything. We do need to go to the APHIS website in our case and look up the plants we are bringing back. So I'm just going to look up Monstera deliciosa because that's just what I thought of first when I filmed this footage here. But you also need the country and you're going to search for it. Once you've done that, you're going to look and make sure you're differentiating between parts of the plant and seed because sometimes there's different rules based on that. And so from looking at that, you should be able to decipher if you can bring that into your country. Now, that PCN thing is like a weird potato disease or something like that. I wasn't really able to find a good list of countries that have that PCN disease everywhere, so you might want to look into that a little more. I was pretty sure South Korea did not have that issue just because they have their stuff pretty much sorted out, so I just assumed that was the case and did some basic research, but you'll want to do that as well. And again, we're looking at plants for propagation and not seeds, so you'll hit view and then you can see the final sheet with a little more information. So if you're doing this and you don't want to get permits, which is a whole nother video we can talk about, it's really easy. You can get these e-filed permits on this exact same website. There's other videos out there. Again, it's not hard and it's free, but most of us are probably not bringing more than 12 plants. So for us, we don't need these special import permits. You do need a phytosanitary certificate, so that's very important. Without that, you're doomed, and we were going to talk about how to get that. There are some other specific rules, it seems like the plant should not be 18 inches tall or taller than 18 inches and some other little quirky things, but most of the time it's pretty tough to bring a massive plant back home, so do look into that a little deeper. Again, I'm just a random person online, so I don't know this process exactly. I'm just telling you how you can do it, similar to how I've done it. I failed to do it, but you'll see later that it was possible. The next thing then is the actual growing media, and this is very important. You're going to have to use some sort of sterile stuff that's basically on their approved list. You cannot have dirt or anything else on there. And this can't have been in this media so long that it's really grown in there. Because basically what they're looking for is a fresh, clean plant that just has some temporary media so you can bring it across the border, can be easily inspected, and that's what they're looking for. So they don't want something that's been in sphagnum moss for 30, 40 days where it's really rooted in there. Alright, so the first plant I wanted to bring back was actually a gift from Mons Master. I had such a good time there, and again, he was such a passionate individual. His plant collection is impeccable, and he really loves the plants. This is not just some minor hobby of his. He really puts his heart and soul into it, and you can see it right away in his collection. And just talking with him, it was so much fun. But anyways, this is a Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. This is that mutant strain that we saw a couple of years ago, where it's much more narrow, so that narrow form, and it's variegated, so very uncommon. So the goal in prepping the plants is really to remove any organic material off of it, so you have to remove all the dirt. And in many cases, I ended up having to remove some of the roots because I just couldn't get it clean enough, and I'm really not sure how vigorous they are in inspecting. So I try to make this thing as clean as possible because you're going to an airport with this in my case, and in your case most likely, so you don't really have second chances. You will see that I totally failed to export this thing, and I'll tell you why a little later. But luckily I have family in Korea, and Mons Master hooked me up by exporting it properly through the mail, and that was a whole nother experience we'll talk about later. But anyways, the funny thing about this is I did try and pre-call the organization that handles all this, their government organization, and trying to spell Rhaphidophora tetrasperma over the phone to a non-English native was just hilarious because it's you're in another country, there's all kinds of language barrier. As it is, I'm trying to use basic Korean, they're using English, and it was so funny to me. It was it ended up working out. It took a while, but they told me that these plants are A-okay. I just want to double check with them to make sure things go smooth. And they're yeah, just bring it to the airport. You can get it inspected. Yada, yada, yada. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We will get to where it all fell apart later. But again, what we're trying to do here is get this thing extremely clean. It's got to be soil-less, soil-free. And then we are going to take one of the approved packing materials, which is sphagnum moss in my case, and we are going to wrap it up real nice, put some plastic around it to keep that humidity, because we are going to be taking this on a plane ride. And in my case, I did this like a week early to kind of be ready for it, and then I put it in another bag and then I labeled it. Once I got that one all set up, I was really getting high on life and I got greedy. And that's when we pulled up Naver, and I figured when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So when in Korea, get that alocasia venom, because it's like costs basically nothing. I got this plant for $30. The unboxing is a little odd with my feet. I guess I'm going like full ape mode here, but maybe you foot freaks like this, I don't know. But I didn't have a tripod, so this is the best I could do. So here it is post wash off. I kind of showed you some of it on the previous plant, but there's no reason to watch me just rinse a plant. Again, I got it as clean as I possibly could. I lost a lot of roots along the way, but I'm not too concerned because sphagnum moss is the best. But yep, cleaned it up. It looks fantastic. It's a beautiful plant. Again, I got this for like $30. Here in the US, they were like $100, $200 at the time. So it's one of those sweet deals where you can get something much cheaper, and it's kind of cool to get it directly from Korea just because that's where it was made. So I don't know, pretty cool. All right, and then once you have everything bagged up and like packaged up and ready to go, at the actual airport, you are going to seek out the plant and quarantine office. This is where they will do their inspection and give you that special paperwork. I'm not sure if every single country does this, but I know South Korea will give you a free phytosanitary certificate if you show up. However, at the airport is where all my problems started. So now it is story time. All right, now we are at story time, where everything went awry in my whole process of trying to get these plants to the USA. When I arrived at the airport, I went and seeked out the actual plant quarantine place, and that was when it all went wrong, because on the door it said there are office hours. It was from 9 a.m. to some other time. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but the point was I got there really early to try and get this all taken care of early, because my flight was at, I believe, like 10:30 or 11, so that was already like putting me in full panic mode, because it's like limiting my window to get this all done and get through security and get to the gate and whatnot. So I'm waiting in line at the door. Luckily I was first, so I could get like helped right away, because a bunch of people with cats and dogs were building up. Now granted, when I did, this is my bad for not looking up the hours. I should have just looked up if there's office hours. I didn't think to, because I'm all my phone calls with them like days prior, they just said show up to the airport, bring the plants, and they'll give me a phytosanitary certificate. No one mentioned office hours, so I will blame it on the whole language barrier, because it wasn't very easy to communicate. But yeah, there's office hours, so make sure you're looking up what those are. I get in there, they open the door at 9. I'm first. The lady asks what I'm there for. I say plants, because she kind of looked puzzled to see me like with a small cardboard box, because everyone's got like big dog kennels and like cat kennels. And I mentioned plants, and she said that she doesn't do that, just cats and dogs, that she has to call someone. So I'm already like, the stress is like growing, because I'm like, oh my God, like what does that even mean? Like, where is this person? So I'm sitting in there, and the minutes are just like ticking by, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Finally, a guy shows up at the 30-minute mark, and he's wearing like a really official like government uniform, and like that already like put off like alarms in my head. I'm like, I'm doomed. Like, this is not someone who does this for sure. This is like more of like a management position. They're not on the front lines. This is going to be a nightmare. So he's also extremely slow, and it's whatever, you know, I'm not judging people, but we are at an airport where things need to be like running quite timely. But you probably haven't seen this in many of my videos, but I'm like extremely anti-government. I can't stand, like, I've just had so many bad experiences. But anyways, I knew it was going to be even more downhill when he started opening the box and he saw the sphagnum moss, and he's like trying to tell me that this is like improper. And then I had to try and tell him that it is proper, and I had to like bring up all the paperwork. This is where I had to bring up the PDFs on my phone, which was a pain, because at the time it's kind of hard to find it. Trying to explain to him that this is like the way that the U.S. government wants these plants to come in. It's one of the approved mediums that you can ship these plants in. That was like a whole 10-minute ordeal, and he had to call people and ask, and finally it was confirmed that yes, you indeed can use sphagnum moss. So I, again, was already like kind of flustered and like starting to get that like that real anti-government going, that like I hate the federal government feeling, because like every time I go and deal with them, it's always stuff like this where they like can't seem to do the one job that they were hired to do. But anyways, I don't want to get too radical in this video because I'm still family friendly. But then he's looking at the plants, and for whatever reason he's got to constantly call and confirm about the plant species, even though there's a computer in front of him. When I did this 7 years ago with the seeds, the lady was an angel. That was like my one good like government experience. She like had everything like filled out in like minutes. I was in there for like 7 minutes, and I came out with a phytosanitary certificate. It was awesome. She's a hero. Most of the other people are just not. So anyways, we're starting to run out of time here, because again, we're almost at a full hour in there, I think, and I've got about 30 minutes to get through security and to my gate. So I had to abandon the plants in a sense. Luckily, I'm very privileged in this situation because my wife is staying behind with her mom and dad for another week or two with the kids to be in Korea longer, so I could give my plants to her. And this is where Mons Master comes in. He, as a savior, he was willing to like get the phytosanitary certificate himself and ship the stuff out to me, which huge lifesaver. I owe him so much for that. It was an amazing act of kindness because that ends up costing like a lot of money actually, because you can't get them free if you're like shipping them as a business. So he ships plants internationally, so it was fantastic. I really appreciate it to him. Big shout out to him. I think I already showed his Instagram earlier in the video, but fabulous collection, and I do have a full interview and everything, like a whole tour of his place, which is amazing, coming out soon. Just need help from my wife translating. But anyways, how do we like avoid the situation of having to abandon your plants at the airport? Well, I found out there are regional offices. You can go and do this prior to. It does not have to be day of, as you can see in like the APHIS stuff. I think you get up to like 12 days prior that you can get this certificate generated. So my advice to you is find a regional office, or even go to the airport a day or two beforehand if you're close enough, and get this all squared away long before your flight has to like take place. Do this days before so you don't have to stress about it on the day you fly out. That is my first tip. Second tip, have your information printed out. I wish I had those PDFs printed out because it would have saved us at least probably 10 minutes if I just had the PDF ready and I could just point, look, sphagnum moss is right here, you know, and try and get translations too, because believe it or not, sphagnum moss does not translate like really well to someone who like doesn't know what sphagnum moss is. It's not an easy, for whatever reason, there's just a lot of language barriers. So try and get translations and get everything squared away just to make your life much easier. So when you deal with any government, it just goes smoothly. So again, do this stuff early. I wish I knew about that earlier, but you get to find out from my like stressful failures how to do it right, like when you want to do it. And then the final step to all of this, once you've gotten your paperwork and you've exited the country, when you like come back to the USA or wherever you're coming back to, you have to declare the plants at customs. So most of the time we don't really declare much. Most people aren't traveling with things they have to declare, but this you have to. If you try and just like waltz through with the plant and they catch you, you're like subject to like I think like 10K in fines, and they're going to take the plants most likely. So just go declare it. You have the proper paperwork, but you are going to run into the beautiful government like problems again. I know when I came with the seeds, it took like an hour and a half and like a million managers for them to figure out what a phytosanitary certificate was. I guess I should have like a little sympathy for these people, because not a lot of people are coming through the airport with like actual documentation. A lot of this is being shipped, and it goes to like the proper like back room, so it is a little bit weird, but I still would think that anyone in customs should know what a phytosanitary certificate is. But again, the government really doesn't have to perform well, because every year they'll get your tax dollars, so it doesn't matter how poorly or how well they perform, they always get paid. So anyways, that's the story of how I failed. Luckily I was still able to get the plants from Mons Master, so again, really appreciate it. So let's move on past the evil federal government and how terrible they are, and on to the cool plants. All right, and here are the plants that I failed to export that did get exported by Mons Master. Again, a great act of kindness. He basically nursed these back to health because I decimated them, and then they were in my family's possession for about a week after that, and since they didn't have any roots or anything and they weren't cared for properly, he had to nurse them back to health before shipping, and he even threw in a variegated anthurium. This is my first, and the really cool thing is this is a very special anthurium because it's from him, and he's bred all of these, and you will see more about this in the big interview video I do. He's got quite the collection, and he has bred so many of these variegated anthuriums, it's crazy. So this will be like a very like prized possession of mine just because it's from him, so it's very special. But anyways, because they've been shipping and they've kind of gone through heck and back based on like how I decimated everything, I am just going to pot these up in some sphagnum moss with a little bit of perlite, a little bit of vermiculite. That seems to always work for me for recovery, and I'm going to keep them in like a nice humid area so they can slowly acclimate from being in like a box for a while, and that should be all they need. And a couple weeks have gone by. Let's check out how they've done in their recovery. Looking at that anthurium first, some of the older leaves did die off because they got quite moist and quite wet for a while, and then as they acclimated to this new environment, most of them didn't do the best, but we do have one brand new growth that's super healthy. It's got variegation and it looks fabulous. I cannot wait for every new leaf because you just never know what kind of variegation you're going to get, and I'm just looking forward to it. It's going to be crazy. The Rhaphidophora tetrasperma fared the worst just because a lot of that white leaf, like once it got wet and stuff, it rotted out pretty quickly and just disappeared because the plant doesn't really need it, but all the green stuff did maintain. One of the early growths that was just like forming and didn't unfurl yet, that one just straight up died when I made the transition, but we do have a full new growth here with this tiny new leaf, so it is actively growing again and doing fantastic, so I'm looking forward to that.
And then finally, here's that alocasia venom. This one did get a little bit beat up just because it's hard to like package these rubbery leaves. They really don't do well whenever like anything happens to them. But it did stiffen up quite a bit. It was pretty bent when we first potted it up, but it looks great, and it did make a whole new leaf, which really has that fantastic venom look. I really got lucky with a good specimen. I think this one's going to be insane as it gets bigger because we have tons of that like venom look with the little curly tails. It's just going to be beautiful. So I can't wait to look at these again in a couple months.
Well, guys, that pretty much sums up this video. I hope you enjoyed that little anti-government story and just the entire process and how to avoid the headaches. If you've got any fun government stories, please leave them in the comments. I love reading the mishaps and just the chaos that I could go on for hours. I have so many stories. But anyways, hopefully you guys learned something from this besides just my detest for the government. That's about as political as this channel will ever get. But anyways, hope you guys learned this, and I hope you try this. Again, most countries I think do this for free, so it's worth a try. My last bit of advice is do be prepared to lose these plants. You just never know what kind of government official you would deal with. If they just have a bad attitude, they can basically just take your plants and say like, too bad, so sad. So just have that in the back of your mind that you might lose these plants in this process. That way you're not like ultra disappointed and radicalized when you do. So as always, guys, may your plants grow strong and healthy. Keep experimenting. I'll see you next time.